The jacket smelled like him. That was the first thing I noticed, a faint mix of his cologne, the one I'd bought him for our anniversary, and the crisp, cold air from the walk home. It was a heavy, worn-in leather jacket, the kind that molds to a person's life. I slipped my arms into the sleeves, the lining cool against my skin, and hugged it around myself. It was a stupid, sentimental thing to do, seeking comfort in the scent of the man who had just shattered my world. "I just need a minute," I'd said, my voice thick with tears I refused to let fall in front of him. I'd fled to the sanctuary of his walk-in closet, a space I still thought of as ours, while he remained in the bedroom, packing the last of my things into a suitcase that felt insultingly small for a 5-year relationship. My fingers, trembling and cold, burrowed into the pockets, seeking warmth or perhaps just a tangible connection to the man I thought I knew. In the right pocket, my fingertips brushed against a small, stiff rectangle of paper. A receipt. I pulled it out, my eyes scanning the details automatically. Hart & Sons Fine Jewelers, Platinum Band, 2 millimeters, $1,850, paid in full. The air left my lungs. A ring! He'd bought a ring! A dizzying, nauseating wave of hope and confusion washed over me. Was this his way? Had the fight, the brutal, relationship-ending words been a terrible mistake? Was this receipt tucked away for a surprise? A secret signal that he was as terrified and regretful as I was? My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, desperate rhythm. My hand dove back into the pocket, deeper this time, as if seeking confirmation. My fingers closed around another object, small, plastic, and strangely familiar in shape. I pulled it out, and the world stopped. It was a pregnancy test. The little plastic window which I had stared at with so much hope and fear 2 years prior now displayed a result I knew as well as my own reflection. 2 bold, blue lines. Positive. A sound escaped me, a choked gasp that was half sob, half gasp. This wasn't mine. I hadn't taken a test. We hadn't even, not in months, not since the distance had started to feel like a chasm. The pieces, sharp and ugly, began to click into place. The late nights at the office, the new secretive passcode on his phone, the way he'd flinch when I touched him. This wasn't a receipt for my ring. This was a receipt for hers, the other woman, the one who was now carrying his child. The closet walls seemed to press in on me, the rows of his shirts and suits suddenly feeling like a gallery of lies. I was drowning in the evidence, holding it right there in my shaking hands. The jacket, which moments ago had been a source of comfort, now felt like a shroud, heavy with his betrayal. "Lena, you okay in there?" His voice came from the other side of the door, laced with an impatience that cut deeper than any anger. I couldn't speak. I could only stare at the 2 items in my palm, the promise of a future and the proof of my replacement, all curated in the pocket of a jacket I'd borrowed for a moment of solace. I shoved them back into the pocket, the movement frantic, as if they were burning my skin. I tore the jacket off, letting it fall to the floor in a heap of leather and deceit. I had to get out. I had to breathe. I yanked open the closet door. Mark stood there, my suitcase at his feet. His expression was a carefully constructed mask of weary resolve. "I found what I needed," I said, my voice miraculously steady, a flat calm over a roiling sea. He nodded, looking relieved. "Good. The Uber's waiting." I didn't look at him. I couldn't. I grabbed the handle of my suitcase, the wheels clicking against the hardwood floor of the hallway that was no longer mine, past the photos on the wall that were now just memorials to a ghost. I walked out of the apartment, out of our life, and into the sterile brightness of the elevator. The Uber ride to my best friend Chloe's apartment was a blur of streetlights and silent screaming thoughts. I replayed every moment of the last year, every excuse, every missed dinner, every time he'd said he was working. Had he been with her? Had he held her hand at the jeweler's? Had he been there when she took the test? Chloe took one look at my face as I stood in her doorway and pulled me into a fierce hug. I didn't cry. I felt frozen, the cold from the leather jacket having seeped into my bones. Later, curled on her sofa under a blanket that smelled of her lavender detergent, I told her. The words came out in a monotone, the story of the receipt and the test feeling like something I'd read in the cheap novel. "Oh, Lena," she whispered, her hand covering her mouth. "That bastard, that absolute soulless bastard. What do I do?" I asked the ceiling. The question wasn't about logistics. It was about how my heart was supposed to keep beating under the weight of this. "You survive," she said, her voice firm. "You survive, and you become so brilliantly happy it blinds him." But survival felt impossible. For the next 3 days, I moved through Chloe's apartment like a ghost. I called in sick to work. I picked at the food she made me. I stared at the television without seeing it. The image of those 2 blue lines was burned onto the back of my eyelids. A baby. He was going to have a baby with someone else. They were going to be a family. The life I had dreamed of, the future I had fought for, was being lived by another woman. On the 4th day, a strange, cold clarity settled over me. The initial shock had worn off, leaving behind a core of hardened resolve. This wasn't just a breakup, it was an annihilation, and I refused to be erased. I needed to know. I needed a name, a face. I needed to understand the scale of the lie I had been living. I started with the receipt. Hart & Sons was a high-end jeweler downtown. It was a long shot, a crazy, potentially humiliating plan, but it was the only one I had. I dressed with a purpose I hadn't felt in months. Dark jeans, a simple sweater, my hair pulled back. I looked composed. I felt like a bomb. The jewelry store was all plush velvet and soft ambient lighting. It smelled of wealth and old promises. A sleek, impeccably dressed woman with a name tag that read Eleanor glided over to me. "Can I help you?" she asked, her smile professional and warm. My mouth was dry. I pulled out my phone, where I had taken a photo of the receipt. It was a risk, but a calculated one. "I hope so," I said, layering my voice with a breezy, conspiratorial charm. "My boyfriend, Mark, he was in here recently and bought a ring. I think he's going to propose. But he's so terrible with sizes, and I'm desperate to know if he got it right. It's a platinum band, 2 millimeters. I have the receipt here from his jacket pocket." I showed her the photo. Eleanor's smile tightened, almost imperceptibly. A flicker of something, recognition, pity, crossed her eyes. I knew instantly that she remembered the sale, and she remembered him. "I'm so sorry, miss," she said, her voice dropping to a more confidential tone. "I really can't disclose any information about our clients." My heart sank, but I pressed on. "Oh, I understand completely. It's just, he's been so secretive lately, and I found this." I let my voice trail off, injecting just the right amount of vulnerable suspicion. I wasn't lying. I was just redirecting the truth. Eleanor glanced around the near-empty store. She leaned in closer. "I really shouldn't," she murmured. "But he wasn't alone." The air in the plush store became too thick to breathe. He wasn't? No. Her eyes were full of a genuine, practiced sympathy now. A young woman, very pretty, blonde. She was with him. They were very affectionate. Blonde. I was a brunette. The detail was so trivial, yet it felt like a physical blow. "Thank you," I managed to whisper, the words ash in my mouth. "Thank you for telling me." I stumbled out of the store and into the harsh daylight, leaning against the cool stone of the building. So it was true. All of it. He hadn't just cheated, he had built a parallel life, complete with a fiancée and a child on the way. The anger came then, hot and purifying. It burned away the grief, the confusion, the pathetic remains of my love for him. I wasn't going to be the sad, discarded ex-girlfriend. I was going to be the one who walked away with her head held high, who left him in the wreckage of his own choices. I went back to Chloe's and I plotted. I wouldn't confront him. Not yet. A confrontation would give him power, the power to explain, to lie, to manipulate. I would not give him that satisfaction. Instead, I packed the last of my things from his apartment on a day I knew he was at work, using the key I was supposed to have mailed back. I left the leather jacket, neatly folded, on the bed. On top of it, I placed 2 items: the receipt for the ring and the positive pregnancy test. I didn't leave a note. There was nothing left to say. The evidence spoke for itself, a cold, brutal exhibit of his double life. My final act was to block his number, his email, and his social media. He could scream his explanations into a void. I was done listening. The weeks that followed were not easy. There were still tears, moments of profound sadness for the future I had lost. But the corrosive, soul-destroying pain was gone, replaced by a steady, growing strength. I focused on work. I reconnected with friends. I started going to yoga with Chloe. I began to remember who I was before I became one half of Lena and Mark. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Mark. His voice was ragged, stripped of its usual confidence. "Lena, please, we need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about, Mark." The things you left," he sounded broken. "It's not what you think." A better laugh escaped me. "Isn't it? You bought a ring for another woman. She's having your baby. The math seems pretty simple from where I'm standing." There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear his shaky exhale. "Her name is Jessica. From the office. It was a mistake, Lena. A terrible, stupid mistake. The pregnancy, it complicated everything." "It complicated everything?" I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. "That it is a child, Mark. Your child." "I know. God, I know." He was crying now, messy, undignified sobs. She's demanding I marry her. She's telling me I have to choose. Lena, I'm so lost. I think I made the biggest mistake of my life." I listened to him unravel, this man I had once loved, who had seemed so solid and sure. He was trapped in the cage he had built for himself. And for a fleeting second, I felt a pang of something that wasn't quite pity, but a distant, profound sadness for the person he used to be. But I felt no urge to save him. "You did make a mistake, Mark, several of them, but they're your mistakes to live with, not mine." "Lena, please." "Goodbye, Mark, and good luck. You're going to need it." I ended the call and blocked that number too. I walked to the window of my new, small apartment, looking out at the city lights. They twinkled, indifferent and beautiful. The jacket, the receipt, the test, they were no longer symbols of my destruction. They were the keys that had unlocked my cage. He was starting a family built on a foundation of lies and betrayal, and I was finally, unquestionably, free. The freedom was terrifying at first. It was too quiet. For 5 years, my life had been a duet, and now I was a solo act, fumbling with the sheet music. I filled the silence with noise. Podcasts, music, the relentless hum of the city outside my window. I adopted a cat, a scruffy ginger Tom from the shelter, who demanded affection on his own terms, which felt like a healthy kind of relationship. I threw myself into my work as a graphic designer, taking on projects I'd previously lacked the confidence for. I redesigned my portfolio website, my personal brand. I was, in a very real sense, redesigning myself. 2 months after I'd left the leather jacket on the bed, Chloe convinced me to go to a gallery opening for a friend of hers. "It's time, Lena," she said, holding up a little black dress I hadn't worn in years. "Time to re-enter the world as a single, fabulous woman, not as Mark's ex." The gallery was crowded, buzzing with conversation and the clinking of wine glasses. I felt a familiar anxiety creep in. This was Mark's world, all sleek surfaces and clever small talk. I was about to retreat to a quiet corner when a man approached me. He had kind eyes and an easy smile, and he wasn't holding a glass of wine. "I'm hiding from the art critic by the canapes," he confessed, nodding toward a woman holding forth with dramatic gestures. "It's a dangerous game. Care to form a strategic alliance?" I laughed, a genuine surprised laugh. "Sure, I'm Lena." "Ben," and I have no idea what that painting is supposed to be. We talked for an hour. He was a history teacher, not a financier. He talked about his students with a passion Mark had never shown for anything. He asked me questions and actually listened to the answers. It was nice, normal, healing. I was still riding the high of a normal, pleasant interaction when I got home. The feeling evaporated the moment I checked my email. There, amidst the newsletters and work correspondence, was a message from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was a single, chilling word. "Sorry." My blood ran cold. I clicked it open. "Lena, you don't know me. My name is Jessica. I think you know who I am. Mark doesn't know I'm writing this. I found your email on an old event invitation on his laptop. I saw what you left on the bed, the receipt and the test. I need you to know that I had no idea about you. He told me you were his ex, that you had broken up months ago and were just being difficult about moving your things out. He said the receipt was for you, a last-ditch effort to win you back that he'd realized was a mistake. He told me the test was yours, that you were trying to trap him. I believed him. I was so stupid. I moved in with him. The pregnancy is getting harder, and he's changed. He's angry all the time. He's secretive with his phone again. I found a receipt for a dinner for 2 at a restaurant he told me he was taking a client to. I'm so scared and so alone. I needed to tell you that I'm sorry for everything, and I needed you to know that you were right to leave. You got out. Jessica." I read the email 3 times, my hands trembling. The other woman. She was no longer a faceless, blonde villain. She was a scared, pregnant young woman trapped in the same web of lies I had been. The anger I felt towards Mark mutated into something colder, more formidable. He wasn't just a cheater, he was a predator, recycling the same lies to destroy one life after another. I didn't reply immediately. What could I say? Thanks for the apology? Sorry you're having his baby? I sat with the information for a day, the weight of her fear settling alongside my own residual pain. The next evening, Ben texted me. "Had a really nice time last night. Would you like to get coffee sometime?" I looked from his simple, hopeful text to the open email from Jessica on my laptop. 2 parallel realities. One offered a chance at a new, healthy beginning. The other was a ghost from my past, pulling me back into its drama. I knew I couldn't just close the laptop on Jessica. Her email wasn't just an apology, it was a cry for help. I wrote back to Ben. "I'd like that. But I have to be honest, I'm coming out of a really difficult situation. It's complicated." His reply was almost immediate. "Aren't the best people? Coffee, no pressure. Just talk." His response felt like a life preserver. I held on to it as I crafted a reply to Jessica. "Jessica," I wrote, my fingers steady on the keys. "Thank you for your email. I'm sorry you're in this situation. Mark is a liar and a manipulator. You weren't stupid. You were lied to, just like I was. You need to think about yourself and your child now. Do you have family, friends you can stay with? You don't have to do this alone, and you certainly don't have to do it with him. There are resources for women in your position. Let me know if you need help finding them. Lena. I didn't offer friendship. I didn't offer to save her. But I offered her the one thing no one had offered me in those first terrifying days: validation and a path out. A week later, I met Ben for coffee. We talked for 3 hours. I told him about Mark, about the receipt and the test, about the email from Jessica. I laid my complicated, messy history on the table between our latte cups. He didn't flinch. He listened, his kind eyes full of empathy. "That sounds incredibly hard," he said, "and it says a lot about you that you even replied to her with compassion." "It's not compassion," I admitted. "It's solidarity. We're both survivors of the same disaster." He reached across the table and gently squeezed my hand. "Well," he said softly, "here's to rebuilding." As I walked home, my phone vibrated. It was another email from Jessica. "Lena," it read, "thank you. I've gone to stay with my sister. You were right. I have to think about the baby. Thank you for your kindness. I won't bother you again. Good luck." I stopped on the sidewalk, a profound sense of closure washing over me. The chapter was finally, truly finished. The jacket, the receipt, the test, they had led me here, to this moment of quiet strength on a sunny street. I wasn't just free from Mark. I was free from the anger, free from the role of the victim. I had faced the ghost of my past and had not only survived, but had extended a hand to the other soul haunting the same ruins. I looked up at the sky, clear and bright blue, and took a deep, clean breath. I was free to build a life for myself, one that was honest and strong and entirely my own. And as I stood there, my phone in my hand with a message from a kind man waiting for a reply, I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my soul, that my story was finally, beautifully, just beginning.